This class is being recorded. And I am Meredith Roddy from Beadalon and Artistic Wire. And today we are doing a mask making extravaganza for the Michaels Community Classroom. So as everybody is bopping on and letting me know in the comments where you're from, and if you've made masks during this crazy, crazy world that we're living in right now, or if you have made mask necklaces. I would love to know in the comments. And it looks like a lot of people are bopping in and letting me know because the comments are scrolling through very, very quickly, which is great. It's great that so many people are here. Welcome to everybody. And I see some new names as well. So welcome to all of our new students today. So it looks like we've got a couple people who have made mask necklaces before, a couple people who have not made mask necklaces before. And I'm hopefully be able to teach everybody some good tips and tricks no matter where you are on the spectrum. So once again, just to remind everyone, this class is being recorded. So if I go over something a little too quickly or there's something that doesn't make a super whole lot of sense, Michaels will post the class about 24 to 48 hours, sometimes quicker, sometimes a little slower, over on the Michaels Community Classroom page on the Michaels website. Also, there are so many other amazing classes from amazing makers. Definitely, I have been learning a lot from clicking around and signing up for classes and watching them over on the Michaels YouTube channel afterwards. And we have Yvette in the comment room answering any questions. So if I go a little too fast, again, like I said, just bop your question over there. I might see it. Usually I do, but sometimes I miss them if they're scrolling through a little too quickly. But Yvette will see, and she'll get back with a link or with an answer, or she'll try to interrupt me as I'm going through all of the classes, and I'll be able to touch on it as well. So let's see. We have a lot. We have a lot to cover today. And this is going to be really, I'm going to throw a lot of information at you, and it might come a little quickly. But what I really wanted to do was show a broad range of ways to make mask necklaces. And really, at the very foundation of all of what I'm talking about today is finishing techniques for jewelry. So a mask necklace it's really just a necklace, right? But we are using it on both of the loops of our mask in order to, and I guess I should back up a couple steps to tell you why I love mask necklaces, because I can put it up and put it down, and I don't have to worry about putting it in my pocket. Maybe it's going to fall out. I don't want to put it down on a surface. I don't want to hold it. It just rests right here. And I find that this is really good for kids at school as well. And so some of the necklaces that we're going to be making today, we're using letter beads. So you could put your child's name or your name even on it. So like I said, we're going to be a lot of, we're going to cover a lot of things. And if you have a tip, again, for people who are watching afterwards on YouTube, you won't be able to participate. But for all of my students who are here live, I would love if you have any ideas as well, because that's what we're creating a community in this classroom. And I learn as much from everybody who is out there beading along or watching classes as hopefully I am sharing as well. So Yvette has posted a couple of times the PDF file that has the instructions, the materials list and the instructions for all 4 of the posted projects. But keep your ears open, because my creative juices are flowing all over the place, and I have a ton of materials out on my workspace that if time allows or if questions allow, I will be able to grab different project or different materials to talk about how to finish those techniques. So lastly, before we get into materials and projects, we would love to see what you make. One of the things that I'm going to talk about a little bit as we are going along is how you can showcase your jewelry. So we're talking about making masks today, but one of the things that is always in the back of my mind and oftentimes in other beaders' minds or other makers' minds is, so I've made like 20 of these now and I've gifted 10, but like I feel like maybe I can make a little bit of money back. Maybe I want to start my own business. Maybe I want to blow up and become the next big internet sensation. I can help you with the basics of that. I'm not sure I can help you become the next big internet sensation, but you never know. So we're going to talk a little bit about social media. And for us, our Instagram is at Beadalon, simple enough, right? And we always love when people do a hashtag, make it with Beadalon. And of course, if you're making it with Michaels, definitely do a hashtag, make it with Michaels. So I think that that's enough chit chat for the beginning of the video. I think let's get down and start making, right? So the first project that we have, and Bianca, we're ready to flip her down and take that camera. And I think she read my mind. I think she went ahead and took the camera for me anyway. Thank you so, so much. So our first mask that we are going to be making is actually this one. Tried to keep everything organized, but then I got distracted. Anybody else feel that way in life? So you can see I've got a lot of stuff going on here. And that's okay. I feel like sometimes when I start class, everything is kind of perfectly set up. But I want people to see the madness because there's definitely some madness going on today. So our first necklace that we are going to be talking about, our first mask necklace, is this one right here. And I made it using Supple Max Ultra. There are a couple of different Supple Max products in Michaels. There's regular Supple Max, which is this spool right here. There's Supple Max Braid, and then there's Supple Max Ultra. And apologies, I don't have the Ultra spool. I thought I had it with everything but when I was getting ready for classes today, it wasn't there. So please accept my apologies, and just pretend it says Ultra right underneath, and you'll recognize that, of course, for when you see it in the Michaels store. The differences between the three, the Supple Max is the original. It's a clear monofilament. So you might recognize this from fishing line, from a tackle box, or the river, the ocean. That's what this is. It's monofilament, it's fishing line. And we have it in several different diameters, and several different diameters, of course, available in Michaels. And Yvette just posted the link for the Supple Max Ultra, which is it's a little softer. It's a little more thread-like. The Supple Max can tend to be a little plasticky because that's what it is. It's monofilament. It's one filament. But the Ultra is much, much softer, and it drapes much more supplely. So what I did with this is I strung up my design. I used the name beads, or the letter beads, I should say, which are my absolute favorite. These are the Pearl Alpha blocks. We're going to be talking about them a little bit as well. But the important thing, this is not a design class, this is a finishing class. So what I want to do is show how to very simply start and finish our beaded design. Now, I like to use lobster claw clasps or spring ring clasps. And depending on how thick my elastic is on my earpieces, that is going to determine how big of a lobster claw clasp that I need. So in the Beadalon variety packs, which are my favorite go-to packs to use because you get pretty much everything you need to make jewelry right here, a bunch of clasps, some tags, some jump rings, you'll see comparatively that the lobster claw clasp is a little smaller, right? You can see that this one is nice and big, this one is a little smaller. Depending on how thick your elastic is, you're going to need to figure out if you want a bigger clasp or a smaller clasp. Now, One of the things that I told you I was going to throw a whole lot of information at you today, and I did not, I'm not going back on that. One of the things that I think is the most important when you are making mask necklaces is to keep them light. Because if you think about it, when you have that mask necklace up on your face, and Bianca, actually, can you take the forward camera real quick just so that I can talk to this? So if you think about it, if you have really heavy beads here, it's going to pull down. And if you're wearing your mask for a long amount of time, it could get a little owie up here at the top of your ears, right? So you want to be cognizant of not using, your best lamp worked beads, oops, or the heaviest crystals that you can have. We can go ahead and go back down to the other camera, Bianca. Thank you so much. We're a great team here. So I like to use either seed beads or glass beads or something that's going to be much lighter than, say, perhaps a 12 millimeter amethyst bead or something like that. So a really good question has just come in on the chat. And the question is, why do you use Supple-Max versus regular beading wire? That is a very, very good question. And the regular beading wire, we are going to demonstrate in the 4th project today. There are a couple of different reasons why I would use one over the other. At the very, very simplest, perhaps because all I have in my beading stash was Supple-Max. Or I just wanted to start out doing this. Maybe I don't make jewelry all of the time, and I just kind of want to dabble and see if I want to get my hands wet in jewelry making. Supple-Max is a really good, very economical material to start out with. And a lot of beaders start out using the monofilament just to get your feet wet, right? You're not 100% sure if this is something that you want to do. I can almost guarantee it will be. But like I said, Supple-Max is a great beginning material. It's also a material that you can knot. So maybe you haven't practiced your crimping skills as much as you should or as much as you could. And being able to tie a knot is something that you're much more comfortable with when you're making jewelry. So that would be another really good reason to use Supple-Max, because all you need to do to affix this, and caveat, you can really next level these knots and get super, super fancy. There are all kinds of fishing knots that I have experimented with and played around with and gotten all fancified with. But really, all you need to do here is tie a surgeon's knot. And all that is I have my cord, okay? And here's my left side and here's my right side. And it's a little hard to see because, of course, it's clear monofilament, but I think that we can get it. So I'm going to take my left hand side and I'm going to cross it over the right hand side, and I'm going to pull it through once, and I'm going to pull it up tight against the lobster claw. Okay. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back with my right hand and I'm going to go right over left once. And then, did that take? Nope, it did not. Once and twice. Okay, and that is a surgeon's knot. If I was doing a square knot, it would just be around that one time, but that extra time around, see if we can't get nice and tight in there. That extra time around is going to make it even stronger. Okay, and then we're just going to tighten this up. Tight, tight, tight up, tight, tight, tight up. And this is not going anywhere. This knot. This is fishing line. And what you can do over here is come in with a thread burner, or with if you do it very, 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 how many varies can I say carefully? A little lighter. But the thread burner, you can come in and just singe that off, and it seals it and it melts it. Let's see, I think we can do much, much closer here, right? It singes it and seals it. So that knot is definitely not going anywhere. All right, let's see. We need to see, there we go. I had all 4 views on my phone, and it makes it a lot easier to have all 4 views, or just the one view. Okay, so I pre-strung up some of my beads here, just because you don't need to see me stringing up a whole bunch of beads. The length that I like for my mask necklaces is 24 inches. You might like your mask necklaces to be a little longer. You might like them to be a little bit shorter. I like 24 inches, and that is what I recommend in all of the patterns that I write. This, of course, is much shorter than 24 inches. And if you don't have a burner, you can always use your scissors, or like I said, I don't like recommending it, but if you have a lighter, like a lighter, or even a match, if you do it really carefully, really what you're doing is it's very, very difficult to see with the clear monofilament, but you're making almost a little mushroom from up the top, so that it seals that material, so that knot's not going anywhere. Get it? Knot. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I am going to knot this end onto the other half of my necklace. So now if I were doing this as a regular piece of jewelry, right, I would have a ring over here of some sort. Maybe I would use a maybe I would use a jump ring, maybe I would use a slip ring, maybe I would use all different kinds of things. But because we are attaching this both ways, we are going to use another lobster claw clasp. Now, whenever you're finishing jewelry, you want to make sure that you build in wiggle room to your design. So whenever I finish anything up, I make sure that all of the slack is out, but before I crimp it, knot it, finish it, whatever my finishing technique is, I always make sure to coil it up, and that builds in the wiggle room that you need. Okay. We are going to talk at the end of the month, I believe, in a couple of classes, about all the different things you should not do when you're making jewelry. This is going to be a highlight of that class. And all I'm doing now is I'm doing that same surgeon's knot, and I'm tightening it up, right? But not so tight. I feel like, there we go. That's better. I think you guys need to be able to see a little bit closer what I'm doing, right? So I am bringing this all the way up here, tightening it up, but I'm making sure I'm not tightening it straight. I'm tightening it curved, because that builds in that amount of space that you need to give your beads the wiggle room, so that they are not going to cut your stringing material. It's funny, I'm trying to stay focused on talking about mask making, but whenever I make jewelry, I feel like there are certain things that you got to talk about. Right? Okay, so I just did that double overhand knot again, and I'm going to come in with my cord cutter, which is always a good tool to have on hand. I use this all the time for cutting supplements, for cutting wildfire, for all different kinds of things. And it sounds like, I just want to give a quick reminder to people who are watching on their phones or on their iPads. You want to mess around with your settings a little bit to make sure that you're able to see everything. The settings on your particular unit that you're watching on are what will affect what you're seeing. So we're showing the view of my hands, and my hands are centered and close up. But if you can't see them quite the right way that you need to, check around in your settings and make sure that you have it all set up correctly. Okay, so supplements, very, very easy. Tie a knot on one end, tie a knot on the other end, and call it a day. Okay, so the second class or the second set of instructions that I have in the PDF that has posted. And again, if you are looking on your phone, you won't be able to see those instructions. It's just the way that the phones translate the chats, but you will be able to it should have been emailed when you signed up for the Michael's class. I'm just going to bop this out a little bit because now what I'm doing is I am using some chain. And this chain is great because it's really, really light. Okay. It is let's see, the Bead Landing Modern Oval Chain. And it's super, super light. And I was talking in the beginning about how much I like to make sure that my mask necklaces are really, really light. And this light chain totally, totally fits that bill. Now, you could use just a piece of chain, right? You could just take the chain and attach a lobster claw clasp on one end and a lobster claw clasp on the other end and call it a day, right? That would be a perfectly reasonable thing to do. However, we're beaders, right? So we got to fancy it up a little bit at least. So to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some 22 gauge artistic wire. And people hate when I do this, but there's a lot of flexibility and a lot of room for using different materials here. So 22 gauge tends to be my go-to for wire wrapping just because it's easier on my hands. If you had 20 gauge would be great. If you had 18 gauge or 16 gauge, you could do this and just not make wrapped loops. If you had 24 gauge, that would work also. I'm definitely of the school that you can use there are a lot of different ways to reach a goal most of the time. Sometimes I'll say you have to use this material. This is what we're using. This is the thing that is the right material for the job. But oftentimes you can get away with what you have on hand. So whenever I am doing any wire working, and we're going to start doing a lot more wire working in our April classes, but I always use a nylon jaw pliers to straighten my wire. It also kind of warms it up a little bit and makes it it gets it ready. It also kind of gets my hands mentally focused on what I'm going to be doing for the wire wrapping. It's just a habit that I've always had. I always straighten my wire. I think it's a lot easier to use and to do that way. So all I'm going to do is a simple wrapped loop. So for those of you who have done a ton of wrapped loops, this will be a good reminder for you. But for those of you who are new, and I do see a lot of new names coming around here, so that's fantastic and welcome to our classes. I'm using my round nose pliers because whenever you are making something round, you always use your round nose pliers. We're not going to be using a chain nose pliers. Where are my chain nose pliers? I had all of my pliers out, and I don't know about you, but whenever I am doing any kind of work, my pliers always tend to disappear. So we're just going to use these right now. And oftentimes I'll take a Sharpie marker. The line on this has worn off from use, but you can just take another permanent marker and make a little line, because then you'll know that your loops will always be the same length until you can kind of eyeball it like I can now. So now what I've done is I have made about a 45-degree angle in my wire just by bending my right hand down a little bit. Now I'm going to use the index finger of my left hand and I'm going to pull that around. This is always the part that's the hardest to show. I'm going to pull that around so the angle is now coming down this way. And now what I need to do is take that flat nose plier. Got to bump this back up a little bit. Sorry guys, I'm not having enough room. And pull the loop around. Oops, you know what? I totally skipped a step. We're going to start that over again from the very, very top. It's getting a little, didn't have enough room for my fingers to do all the things that I needed to do. All right, let's start that over again. So I'm going to bend that down at 45 degrees. I'm going to take my finger up and around. Now what I'm going to do is I have that loop around the top jaw of the pliers. I'm now going to put it on the bottom jaw of the pliers. And I'm going to switch hands. So I have everything in my right hand right now. I'm going to switch it to my left hand. And then I'm going to take my chain nose, flat nose, whatever pliers works for you, and pull that loop around toward me. Okay, so everything with wrapped loops is on 90-degree, or not 90-degree, but on very specific angles, unless you like messy wrapped loops. And that's a class for another day. This is an easy or a neat wrapped loop class. So now I like to use the push and pull method. So I'm going to push that tail around to the back, and then I'm going to pull it around to the front. I'm going to push it to the back, and I'm going to pull it around to the front. And I do that 2 times or 3 times or 4 times, depending on your preference. And I'm going to snip the little end off. And then the difference, in my opinion, between professional wrap loops and amateur wrap loops is you always want to come back in and just very gently push that tail down. Okay, so that's the basic of the wrapped loop. However, we are joining this wrapped loop to the piece of chain. So in order to do that, we have to just add one extra step. And I need to rescue the Legos. Let me just see what my dog was just chewing on. Not good. He's being a naughty boy today. For all of you who are following the trials and tribulations of Finn, the crazy dog. All right, so let's start that over again at the very beginning, and let's show how to add that loop to our chain. Drop it, drop it. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Anybody want a golden retriever? just for the amount of time that class is. You have to give him back. Okay, so we're gonna bend that over, come back at ourselves here, switch hands, and I'm just taking this right up to speed, because now what I'm going to do is I've made that loop, right? And I'm going to add it to the end of my chain. So I'm just coming here right at the very end of my chain and sliding it on. Now, I didn't open my loop quite enough, and it's better to open it less than more. So I'm just going to come in here. I'm going to scoosh it open just a little bit more. And now I can easily slide that in. That's a nice angle right there, right? Just right like that. So now usually what I will do is I will use those round nose pliers. If you have bent chain nose pliers, this is a really good place to add those or to use those as well. And I'm going to hold my round nose pliers over that loop. And I'm just trying to get it super close so everyone can see, but also me. It's always a challenge, right? I need all of you guys to be able to see, but then also for me to see. I'm going to come around here, and I'm just going to do that push and that pull until I have the number of wraps that I want. Okay, and now I have that wrapped loop attached to the chain. And I'm going to come in here and I'm going to snip this off. Okay. And like I said, we're really talking about finishing techniques today. We're not necessarily talking about how to build our piece of jewelry, because I wanted to be able to really focus on all of the different ways that you can make a mask necklace. We did do a couple of months ago, I'm just trying to get this tail tucked in nicely. A couple of months ago, we did a soup to nuts crimping crimped beaded mask necklace that you can go back and watch on the Michael's Community Classroom YouTube channel and see kind of beginning to end in more detail. And again, apologies, I keep bopping that camera. Okay, so now what we're going to do is add our bead. So I'm using these crackled beads. Again, they are really, really light. They're quartz, but they feel almost like a plastic kind of a weight to them, which again is really good for making sure that you have that your necklace isn't pulling down on you. So what I did is I liked 12 links of chain. So if I were making this as a necklace, I would have done all of these links beforehand, but we're just going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And the fun thing about this chain, if memory serves, is it's actually not soldered. So you can come in here with here are my pliers, with 2 pliers, and just like a jump ring, open that up and close it. Okay. So even if you did all of your wrapped loops without attaching them, you could just do your wrapped loops, open up your chain, and close it back up again on your loops. Sometimes I do it that way. Sometimes I do it the other way. So I'm going to need another chain here that is 12 links. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I'm going to open this up. And as much as I love soldered chain, I love chain that is not soldered, because then I can open it and close it and add things to it without losing a link. I don't like losing links. It makes me very sad. Okay, so now we're going to come here and add that bead. And again, they're big beads, but they're not heavy. So that's why it's a good compromise, because we get a little bit of oomph, a little bit of bang for our buck here, but they're not heavy. So when you're choosing your beads for your necklace, you definitely want to make sure that that you're not doing really heavy beads. So now I'm grasping this bead right at the top in my chain nose pliers, or I'm sorry, in my round nose pliers, because I'm making something round. So we did the loop on the one side, now we're doing the loop on the other side. So I just use my thumb and I bend that over at 45 degrees. And my pliers right now are horizontal. I now need to make them vertical. Okay, so now my pliers are vertical. It's very, very difficult to show in top down, but we're going to do our best. And I'm going to take my index finger and pull that around the top. So just like I did before, it's coming around and over the top of that round nose plier. So now it is on the top round nose plier, and I am going to shift it so it is on the bottom round nose plier. Quick disclaimer, there are a couple of different ways to make wrap loops. This is how I make mine. I'm going to pull this one back around to me at a really nice 90-degree angle. And I'm going to push and pull and push and pull. And I have a lot more wire than I necessarily need right here, but it is always better to have a little bit more wire than a little bit less. The cost of the wire is so negligible, and the ease or the easiness of doing your wrap loops with a little bit more wire is totally worth those little scraps that you can either reuse for a different project, or sometimes it's better just to scrap them. Okay, so here I did my wrap loop, but I didn't do it on that other piece of chain. neither here nor there, because what I can do now is come in here and open up that link and add that wrapped loop. So I showed both ways. I showed doing the wrapped loop onto the piece of chain, the chain link, and then showed just doing the wrapped loop and then adding the link of chain afterwards. So your preference, okay? Continue doing this the whole way around. This technique really could not be any easier. And again, I'm going to come in here and I need to add both a jump ring and the clasp here. If your clasp had a big enough hole that it could fit over this chain, you could do that, but I like using a jump ring to attach the two. It gives it a little bit more movement, and it also gives it a little bit more, I don't know, I just think it looks nicer. Sometimes there's a rhyme and a reason for things, but sometimes the answer is it just looks nicer, right? All right, so here, just in case, it's always good to have a refresher on opening and closing jump rings. You do not want to pull your jump rings apart like this. You want to hold one side in one plier, one side in the other plier, and then twist your one wrist toward you and one wrist away from you. And then that opens the jump ring really nicely. I'm going to scoop up my chain. I'm going to scoop up my lobster clasp and then close that back up again. And whenever I close jump rings, I always do kind of a little wiggle back and forth to make sure that they're nice and closed. And then theoretically, this would be long enough. You can just bring it on over, and then you have a chain that is really, really light, but also really pretty. And you can add any bead in here. You could add a crystal, you could add a gemstone. Again, and I feel like I don't want to belabor the point, but you want to make sure that it's going to be lighter rather than heavier. Okay, so another favorite material that we have, I'm going to keep my tools, because I do tend to, when I'm shifting things in and out of the way, shift my tools away. Another interesting and fun and perhaps different way of making a mask necklace is using parachute cord and doing some macrame. Why not? Right? When we were first thinking about the about how to do this kind of, I don't know what you call it, survey in mask necklace making, we were brainstorming all of the different materials that we could use. And my friends at Michael's sent me a whole bunch of things to play around with. And one of the groups of materials in my big bag of goodies were some parachute cord. And at first I was thinking, well, that's kind of I don't know. It just I struggled with kind of trying to figure out what I wanted to do with it. But then I thought, wouldn't it be fun to do a little bit of macrame using the Beadalon tying station? This is much thicker and bigger than probably you would want to do for your mask necklace, but who knows? Go bold, go big or go home, right? Sometimes we want to go big and bold. Sometimes we want to be delicate and whimsical. So I thought I'd show, maybe this will inspire somebody. Parachute cord, and I do want to make sure, Yvette and Bianca, give me the wave if I neglect to talk about using cord ends on the parachute cord as well, because that's something that I wanted to touch on as a really, really easy way. So if you're following along in the instructions, this is the third necklace. So I warned you at the beginning that we were going to be covering a lot today. So this is the Beadalon tying station. And I know a lot of people have this, but if you don't, Yvette has posted the links in the chat. But if you are looking on the Michaels website, just look for the, I can't even tell you what just happened. That was awesome. Oh my goodness. Maybe we're not going to be showing our last project today. Let's focus on the fins. Like, oh my gosh, there's so much on the floor for me to eat right now. Okay. Let me get my train of thought back. So we're using the tying station and we're going to use these great big craft beads. But again, these craft beads are really, really light. So theme of the class today, light. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a loop with a barrel knot with about 2.5 feet of parachute cord on one side. And let me just double check the instructions that I wrote and all of the remaining cord. And one of the things that I love about the tying station is it has a measuring device right here. So I can measure out, that's 20 inches and 10 inches and 20 inches. And we'll just go 30 inches just to keep it even. And I'm going to make a loop, and you can make a whole bunch of different knots here. I like doing a little, either a barrel knot or a little bit of a decorative knot. So let's see if I can't replicate that right here. So if you remember from middle school, in my case, tying your shoelaces into those little knots, what I've done is I have taken my cord, doubled it over, and now I am threading it back on itself. In the back of my head, I'm trying to figure out how in the world I am going to recover from what just spilled in my classroom. Okay, so I'm going to go around and I'm going to wrap around 2, 3, and maybe 4 times just for decoration. And then I'm going to thread that end, and this is the short end that I'm using, through that loop. Okay. And then I'm just going to kind of finagle this tight. So maybe there we go. Perfect. So just a little bit of a decorative knot. If you want to do a square knot, if you want to do any other kind of a knot, that's fine too. But again, just something fun. And the way that I am going to attach this in the end is, again, with that jump ring lobster claw combination. So the way that the tying station works is up here at the top, we have a wing nut and a base plate. So I'm going to unscrew that wing nut and take off the base plate. I'm going to find my loop, which I have since lost. Here's my loop. And I'm just going to put it over that screw. So let's come in nice and close so we can see what I'm doing here. Okay. And the tying station is a whole class in and of itself. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace that base plate and just tighten up the wing nut. It doesn't have to be so tight as to smush that down. Really, all we're doing is holding that in place. So now on to that short, that 2.5 foot section, I'm going to string on, how many am I going to string on? 12? 7. I'm going to string on 7 beads. And you can do more here or you can do less. The thing that I like about many, I would dare say most Michaels beads, is that they have these great big holes in them. See how nice that is? It can offer some challenges with certain kinds of stringing, But when you are using materials like parachute cord, it's great because with a little bit of twisting, see how I'm twisting that parachute cord to get that in there? With a little bit of twisting, you can get the beads in really easily. You don't have to ream them out. You don't have to worry um, about using a needle. You can just usually get them in really well. So we would have done 7 here, but I've done 3 in the interest of time. And now what I'm doing is on that bottom part of the base plate, I'm just loosening it enough so that I can pull this up. Okay. So let's see, just loosening enough so I can pull this up just a little bit. And I'm going to slide that 2.5 foot section of paracord underneath. And that's the one that has my beads on it. And this one I want to get tight because what this is doing is it's holding this pretty tight. I mean, it doesn't have to be like violin or guitar string tight, but tight enough that it's not really sagging. And now all I'm going to do is with this long cord, I'm going to start tying a half hitch knot. And in the interest of making this easier on all of us, I'm just going to cut this so it's a little bit shorter so that you don't have to watch me pulling it through and pulling it through and pulling it through. So we are going to tie 20 overhand knots. And the way that we are going to do this is a little bit closer, a little bit easier to see. Okay, so it's an overhand knot or a half hitch knot, depending on your level of expertise. But really all you need to do is make either a square or a P or a flag or a sail, depending on how you learned how to do your macrame over here on the right-hand side. And we are only going to be making our knots on the right-hand side. So I'm taking this over the base thread, and then the tail will come from, I call it quadrant 3 over here where my finger is, underneath through that loop, okay? And then I pull up. I don't pull down, I don't pull over, I don't pull to the side, I pull up, okay? And I'm gonna do that again. So I make my P, my triangle, my flag, whatever it is, and I take the end from the quadrant 3 down here on the bottom left, and then through that loop. And that is all you need to do. So that was 2, and then 3, and then 4. There's a reason why I'm doing 5. And then 5. And whenever I'm doing this kind of macrame, after my 5th knot, I take that thread and I go underneath the thread and bring it back out. Because what that does is it creates this really nice spiral. And I did not do that in the beginning. And can you see the difference between those 2 spirals? One is kind of elongated, a little mushy. Sure, I can twist it around and kind of bring it into place a little bit, but really by going 5 knots and then bringing the cord underneath and back into position, that really, it makes for a much nicer knot experience. Okay, so we're gonna pretend that I did 20 knots here, and I'm gonna move my next bead into place. I don't know why I'm just not loving the angle that I've got here. Maybe we can try that. I'll be a little bit better. Okay, so we'll say that we did 20 knots here. I'm gonna move this up into place, and I'm just going to continue doing that same knot over and over again, and it traps that bead into place. So you can do this technique with any size parachute cord. I'm just thinking, I mean, that's a bold statement, any size. Almost any size, as long as it fits over, as long as your beads fit over it, right? As long as it fits through your bead holes. So that's 4 and 5. And then I got to 5 knots, so I'm gonna take that underneath and reset on the other side. So just do it. I promise you will be happier if you do that 5 knot, unless you want your spirals to be a little bit longer. And again, we'll just pretend that we did 20 and we move our bead into place and keep going over and over and over again. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do 5 more, and I'm going to take this off and just show then how to add that jump ring and the lobster claw clasp the exact same way we did it on the chain. But now you have a really different way of using parachute cord without a parachute cord buckle to attach a mask necklace to your mask. So just to remove this from the tying station, just gonna unscrew from the top. And actually, before we do that, we want to loosen it up from the bottom. It's always a challenge to show the tying station in a close-up video because it's so long. So we're going to take this off from the top, and I'm afraid to put it aside where I put that other one because I'll show you what happened. I think it'll make everybody feel better about their latest beading disaster. So now what I'm going to do is I am going to create another loop on the other side that same way. So let's see. I'm going to take, so this is my short piece that I was doing, that I had the beads on. And this piece is the piece that I've been doing my knots on, right? But if I had been doing the, all of the knots, this piece is going to be much, much shorter. So now what I want to do is just make a matching wrapped barrel knot the same way I did before. So I'm going to take this out here. This comes back along itself, and then you wrap once. Does anybody remember how many times I wrapped the first time? I think it was 3 times. Twice. 3 times. And take that through the center and then tighten everything up. There we go. And you might have to kind of finesse it around a little bit. Oops, sorry guys. Finesse it around a little bit to get all of those wraps kind of where you want them to be. Take this up. But one of the things that I love about using parachute cord is that you can burn the ends really well to seal them off. And I totally forgot to put a loop in on that one. So, oh wait, no, here it is. Something has gone awry with my knot. So let's try that again, right? If at first you don't do your knot the right way, let's try it a different way. All right, so I came here, I finished my end, and I'm going to make my loop because that's the loop that I need to make my oh, I see what I did. I did it backwards last time. I'm so sorry. The loop that I need to make my to attach, right? We need to be able to attach something. So I'm being very confused on my knot right now. Bear with me, friends. Sometimes my knot making gets a little confusing. And I do know that at Michael's in the finding section, there are so many different sizes of clasps, of lobster claw clasps, of spring ring clasps, all different sizes for your elastic. So maybe your mask has elastic that's a little bit thicker, right? Sometimes it depends on what the brand is, if you made it yourself, where you got the elastic. There we go. So depending on what the and I have brought the my mask to Michael's to make sure that the lobster claw will fit over it, right? Because you don't want to get it home and then open up the package and then have it not fit. That would be a bummer. So I'm just going to snip these off. And again, I love sealing these on the ends with either a lighter or with a cord cutter. But where are my jump rings? And for this, in that Findings Variety Pack, there is a nice big jump ring that is perfect for, sorry guys, for using over the parachute cord, because this stuff is thick, right? So you want to make sure that you're using a jump ring that's going to be big enough to fit over it. And since I dropped the big jump rings on the floor, we're going to use this one just for effect. And I think that the hole on that one is just a little bit too small. So again, that's why there are a bunch of different sizes in the variety pack and a bunch of different sizes available at Michael's, because sometimes you need to double check and make sure that it's going to fit. So again, just open up your jump ring and close your jump ring. And another way of finishing off your necklace. Now, before I move on to figuring out how I'm going to handle the disaster that happened on my floor, I want to talk a little bit about different ways of finishing off parachute cord. Because at Michael's, there are also tons of different cord ends. So I have a couple of different sizes and varieties here. And these are also really good, lightweight, secure ways of finishing off your necklaces, your mask necklaces, and different types of jewelry for your designs. These also work really well on suede lace. So I've got this really pretty deerskin lace, and also some other suede cording. So again, I wanted to kind of give people a lot of different inspiration and a lot of different ideas for ways of making mask necklaces today. So whenever I open a package from or from anywhere really, I don't know why I do it this way, but it just makes my life easier. We have these cord ends, and these are 3mm cord ends. So I'm hoping that this is 3mm. This opening the way I want it to. There we go. So just as another way of doing this, what you could do is in camera is use a little bit of glue. And I like using the Beadalon bead stringing glue for things like this, and glue the end cap on, or the cord end, and then use a jump ring to attach the lobster claw like that. So that's just one other way. Another great way are these fold over crimps. And I really like using these. This is how I pretend like I'm trying to save my nails. This one opened a little bit easier. Let's see if I can get in here. Does anybody else watching have challenges getting into packaging? I feel like sometimes they make it a challenge on purpose. So this would be really good on this lace right here. And this can take a little bit of finessing. Again, a little bit of glue in here works wonders. You can also put a couple of different, a couple of strands in here, but that's a class for a different day. And then a little bit of glue. And then this, just the way that I do this is just a little bit of finagling with my pliers. So sometimes I use chain nose pliers for this. Sometimes I use flat nose pliers. Sometimes it works great the first time. Sometimes it's a little bit of a challenge. But basically what you want to do is flatten one side down and then flatten the other side down over it. So kind of fold it down over it. And when you've got a little bit of glue in here, this is a great finishing technique for using a different material. So again, we talked in the beginning about making it either as simple or as challenging or as fancy as you can. This would be, and again, if I had glued this in, we would be having, it wouldn't have slid out like that. But this would be a really, really simple way of finishing off a mask necklace as well. So let's see if I can salvage everything that fell down here to show my very last technique, which is simple crimping. So again, I love these letter beads, and I spelled out "your mask protects me, my mask protects you." And then I used some nice, just some decorative stars in between and some silver beads here at the end. And this one I did in a traditional crimping technique with bead stringing wire. So I love that I'm picking everything up off of the floor to be able to show this, but I think it's going to work. So I pre-strung, and for this I used 49 strand 0.018 wire. I definitely recommend, if you are newer to bead stringing, to go back and watch a couple of the classes that I have done using bead stringing wire. And again, in that 5 things you should never do when making beaded jewelry, I'm going to go over soup to nuts crimping and wire and all of the ins and outs of what all of these different numbers mean. But just for right now, what I'm going to do is to show crimping and how to crimp this on to the end. And that will be our last, oh my goodness, we're coming to the end. I can't even believe it. Of the treatise, the primer, I don't know, so many different finishing techniques and ways to make jewelry. And I think that the best part of today's class is the humongous beading mess that I made on my station. We are so at Beadalon, we are currently talking a lot about our beading stations, and we're joking about taking some photos of the disaster that I created today. And I think that would make a lot of people feel better about their crazy workstations. So again, I can't tell you how often I reach for these little packs, these little variety packs. So for our last necklace today, I've put on a number 2 crimp tube. And again, in that 5 things not to do when you're making jewelry, we're going to talk all about crimps and crimping and all different things. But just for now, take it with faith and a grain of salt that we're using a size number 2 crimp tube with this 0.018 wire. Put my crimp tube on, put my clasp on. I'm going to come around and back through that crimp tube. Get everything nice and tightened up. And were my crimping pliers one of the things that fell in the disaster? I have a feeling it was. It's okay. I have nothing if not more crimping pliers here on my station. I just need to make sure that I have the right size. Yep, perfect. Okay. Whew. And that is why we have a ton of tools on our crimping station. So always when you're crimping, we start just real quick. There are 2 holes, right? A front hole and a back hole. Front hole is smooth, back hole has a little divot on the bottom of it. We start in the front, we go to the back, and then we go back to the front again. So I want to make sure that my beading wires are not crossed in that crimp tube. That can sometimes be the toughest part of all of it. Your wires will always want to cross, and they can give you a little bit of a hard time, but you want to try to show those wires who's boss so that those wires are not crossed. And sometimes what you need to do, like I'm going to have to do right now, is make that first compression with the wires crossed, because now I can come in here, I'm hoping, and uncross those wires. It's important. So we're going to take our time and make sure that those wires are not crossed. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here in the back jaw, right there, nice view, and press down. Okay, and that gives us that nice little jelly bean or C kind of a compression. And that was in the back jaw, and now I'm going to come back into my front jaw and press down again. And on this step, what I like to do is round my pliers around so that I have a nice crimp. Again, do not, everybody always wants to come in here in the front and smush this down. Please, please, please promise me, swear an oath that you will not do this. All this does is break these wires. It does not make it stronger. What makes it stronger is a nice around motion here, so that metal is holding on to the wire in the way that the crimp tool has allowed it to form. If you smash that, I'm going to say it again, all you do is smash those wires and allow the opportunity for your necklace to break. And nobody wants that. Okay, so I have a feeling that I want to just snip this little end down just like that, because now I have one side done, right? Easy enough. And I just strung on some small light beads just for demonstration's sake. And what I like to do is just tuck that tail into, and I'm actually pleasantly surprised. I did not think it was going to fit through that bead, but it did. It's going to fit through the second one. It did. Oh, that's very exciting. Okay, and once again, this is where that wiggle room becomes very important. I'm going to come here and snip that off. I almost always work from the spool when I am beading, like a necklace like that. It helps me waste a little bit less wire. It helps me keep my design in one place. If I want to make it longer, I want to make it shorter, I can do that. If I've already cut my wire off of the spool, I am then locked in to whatever I have cut. All right, so one last lobster claw clasp. I put my crimp tube on. I'm going to put my lobster claw clasp on, around and through. And then on this step, I like to go around and through that crimp tube, but I'm also going to go through 3 beads. Okay. And I'm going to take my chain nose pliers and just pull very gently on that end to tighten all of this up. Now, the inclination is to hold everything up and get this as tight as humanly possible, right? Don't do that. Again, I feel like I'm doing a spoiler alert for all of the things that we're going to be talking about. You always, always, always want to just build in that wiggle room, because you don't want to put all of the tension on the wire. I know I'm giving a lot of information, but I can't teach and talk about crimping without going over all of those basics. And so I'm coming around, just rounding that around, not giving it an extra squeeze in the front, not doing that. Don't do that. And then coming in here with my nipper and getting that as close as I possibly can. And on this example here, because I was using so much silver and these nice silver beads, I also added over here a crimp cover. So let's just go ahead and finish it on out, finish strong by adding a crimp cover. And you can do this in a couple of different ways. You can use a mighty crimping plier if you have it, or you can use, like I like to use, just my chain nose pliers or my flat nose pliers, and give it just a gentle squeeze. The best thing with crimp covers is small incremental movements. Best thing with most jewelry making is small incremental movements. And you just want to move it around so that each of the sides comes together. And sometimes it works a little bit better than other times. You just kind of want to coax it into place, back and forth, and then you're all done. So my masks fell also, of course, when I had my beading disaster. So I'm just going to grab that up off the floor. And once again, as with all of these techniques, really all you're doing is attaching to a lobster claw that is large enough to fit over your elastic, and then creating whatever kind of design you want. And the possibilities really for any and all of this are completely limitless. So you can do something super fancy with all of these different words, or you can do something super, super simple just with beads, or you could even do it with seed beads. You know, anything that you have in your stash would work for this. So whew, that was a good one. That was a doozy. There was a lot of information and a beading disaster. So really we had everything that that you could possibly ask for in a class, in one class. I haven't had a beading disaster in all of the classes that I've had. So I feel like that is a good that it happened today. So thank you everybody so much for joining me. Remember that the Beadalon classes for Michaels are on Wednesdays at 2:00 Eastern Standard Time. And we've also added some classes on Saturdays with our new instructor. She's not new to us, but she's a new instructor for Michael's classes, Sarah Ellis. She did her first class last week and was fantastic. Oh, do people want to see what happened to the fallen beads? It's not that bad. They're mostly under fin right now. It was just a couple of trays that fell down. But thank you so much to Bianca for doing the Michael's side of the moderation, and Yvette. That was a lot of info to keep up with. So I really appreciate you putting all of this as well. So I think that that's it for me for today. Please be sure, as I mentioned before, to follow us on all of the socials. And that's really just, I think, one of the first places to start when you are starting to do your own self-promotion. Just get out there, get an Instagram account, get a Facebook page for your brand, and just start doing photographs. I need to do more of that myself. They don't have to be perfect. It's better if you practice a little bit, but in the beginning, just get in the habit of photographing your work and putting it out there. Because the more people who see your work, the more people who will invariably want to purchase your work if that's something that you are so interested in doing. Make sure you follow at Beadalon, and when you post your creations that you've used with Beadalon or a technique that you learned from me or from one of our products, use hashtag make it with Beadalon. And of course, since our classes are for the Michaels Community Classroom, be sure to hashtag make it with Michaels as well. So that's it for me today. I will see you all again soon, but until then, happy beading.